Hey guys and girls, Bald now back with you. On this video I will be talking about the X-Files Season 1, Episode 21. It is called Tooms. And you know, sometimes a great horror icon returns with a bang.
That's not what you think. This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
And other times he really doesn't. Take a look at this.
Don't be afraid. Father Marin will help us.
All right, Regan. I'm ready. Bring me down.
He is with me. Come down. Down, Father. To meet me.
You're dying, Marin. Dying. And your hopes die with you.
Not only Kukumo, but others like him began to appear in the world. I found these people where I could and tried to protect them against evil. So Satan has sent Pazuzu to destroy this goodness.
So the question was always going to be, will the return of classic X-Files Monster of the Week, Victor Tooms, be a bit of a Nightmare on Elm Street 3 triumphant return, or will it be more the disaster that is Exorcist 2, The Heretic? Well, truth is, it's actually somewhere in the middle, because this is the first time a returning Monster of the Week has come back, and they obviously left quite a large gap for the sake of impact and obviously this consistency in the timing of it, because Tooms of course appeared first in episode 3 of the first series, the brilliant episode Screeze, which is still one of my favourite episodes, certainly of the first series, and he makes his glorious comeback here near the end of season 1 in this episode Tooms. And it really is a mixed bag of an episode. It's a very strange episode where I'll say then mostly I enjoyed watching it, and there's some fun to be had. There's some good moments of tension and horror when it comes to Squeeze, and of course Doug Hutchinson does a good job as always. He's fantastic in the role, but I have to say the stuff with Tooms overall is a bit of a letdown, because it's just a lot of silly sort of inconsistent plotting, and there's actually some clunky dialogue, some cheesy moments between him and Mulder, and it's actually some of the stuff in with the other characters that saves the episode. There's actually some really well done meaty stuff and enjoyable character stuff outside of the Tooms plot, but it's actually the Tooms plot, as much as I enjoyed it, I think because of Doug Hutchinson, which does drag the episode down. So I'll get into it. So Tooms is up for release in the episode because the only attack which they could pin him to was the attack on Scully, and so his lawyer makes the case with support of his doctor. Then he's been in a mental institute for like 6 months now, whatever it was, 6 months, and he's shown every sign that he's learned from his lesson. He's he's rehabilitated himself and he's willing to become a part of society. And this scene in court is just really very over the top, because we get Mulder screaming at the top of his voice, just he comes with slides, I have to say, which I do love. That is a very Mulder thing to do. He has slides prepared to make his case in court, but he comes off as an absolute nuts, raving and all this at the jury. It'll be on your head and so forth if you release it. And obviously he goes into his whole theory about Tooms, about the whole hibernation, and he only kills every so many decades. And of course they don't believe him. They laugh him out of court, and Tooms, at least in that scene, gets the last laugh. But just some of this stuff is like ridiculous and just unbelievable, because Tooms gets welcomed in by this old couple who this classic mum and pop who just, you see them walking along the corridor with him all sort of smiling. So it's like, oh yeah, sure, we'll just welcome this potentially psychopathic killer into our house. No problem. We're not worried about that. Also, he conveniently is allowed back at his old pest control job. I love the fact that he's a pest control guy. That's just so perfect for the character. But that role conveniently is still open after 3 months. And also, again, they don't seem worried that, this guy could be a killer. We'll just welcome him back to gainful employment. It's just these clunky, convenient plotting, which I think if there'd been a bit more thought into this plot, could have made the episode all the more stronger. And some of the interactions with Mulder and Tooms just seem a bit off. There's a scene where Mulder is basically playing mind games with him when he approaches him on the street, and he just sort of has this line about, excuse me, have you seen my dog? It's like a Norwegian Chihuahua or something like that. It's like, what the fuck? Come on, Mulder, you can do better than that. It's just a random line and just so sort of clunky, but I can't deny that I enjoyed seeing Tooms back in this episode, and Doug Hutchinson is so good in the part. But there's just a decent amount of tension, but there's just so much silly moments with his character and with what's happening. There's a scene where he goes off because he's looking for his next victim, and he tries to get inside the house through the toilet rather than trying the window, and it's sort of sloppy for 2 reasons. One, because it doesn't make a great deal of sense, and the other because it just feels like that scene is just one of a couple where you do get a sort of a fake out just to play with the audience. I do like how they get across his desperation, that he needs his next kill, otherwise he can't survive. So they do build up a decent amount of tension with that. I also like the fact that they bring back the old detective from the original case who invested Tooms all those years ago, who also appeared in Squeeze. So that's good, continuity, and I think I do like that they at least expand on the mythology of Tooms and the whole history. And there's some good scenes with him and Scully working together, that detective. I think the actor's familiar. He's one of these good sort of character actors also. So that's cool stuff. But I'm really not sure what I think of Victor Tooms' death in this, his ultimate fate, because Mulder and Scully eventually track down his lair, if you like, where he hibernates, which is underneath an escalator in a mall, and it's Fox who sort of rather unwittingly follows him in. A little bit sloppy, and he there's this whole thing with he can't reach his gun apparently when Tooms comes after him, which is a good horror moment, and I enjoy the fact that they track him down late at night in this deserted mall. So actually, visually from a horror point of view, that all works well. But ultimately, when Scully helps Fox escape from Tooms, all they do is they turn the escalator back on, and he gets squashed like a bug, basically. And that's it. I'm not sure. What do you guys think of that death? A bit anticlimactic, perhaps. So that's the end for Victor Tooms, one of the great monster of the weeks of the whole X-Files. But believe it or not, there's even bigger fish to fry in this episode, because as I said, some of the best stuff is with the characters, including this standout scene between our protagonists, Mulder and Scully. Check it out.
We'll walk around the block. Yeah, that sandwich that I served.
It's liverwurst. Mulder, you know that proper surveillance requires 2 pairs of agents, one pair relieving the other after 12 hours.
Article 30, paragraph 8.7.
This isn't about doing it by the book. This is about you not having slept for 3 days. Mulder, you're going to get sloppy and you're going to get hurt. It's inevitable at this point.
A request for other agents to stake out Tooms would be denied. To them, we have no grounds.
Well, then I'll stay here. You go home.
They're out to put an end to the X-Files, Scully. I don't know why, but any excuse will do. Now, I don't really care about my record, but you'd be in trouble just sitting in this car. And I'd hate to see you carry an official reprimand in your career file because of me.
Fox.
And I even made my parents call me Mulder. So. Mulder.
Mulder, I wouldn't put myself on the line for anybody but you.
If there's an iced tea in that bag, could be love.
Must be fate, Mulder. Root beer. You're delirious. Go home and get some sleep.
Here, take my sandwich. I only had one bite. You're gonna want it later, believe me. And you'll call me if anything happens, immediately. I'll be here. Oh, and 11:30, station 790, Pete Rose late night sports talk radio show.
That's the Mulder and Scully we know and love. Absolutely brilliant. Classic scene, classic writing, and you can see the chemistry. But it's one of the best Mulder and Scully scene of this season, and probably of the whole show, for so many reasons. Obviously, you've got the lovely classic banter coming in there, which is both playful and funny, but also it's heartfelt as well. There is something like sincere and human about their exchanges. Even it's almost like I think I like the fact that then at a moment where it appears to be getting a bit more serious, Fox will detach it with some classic like why sort of Mulder wit, but also Scully does the same. It's like she's learned to play this game with him, and it's part of their bond. I think also what it's doing is really it sort of shows you how far their relationship personally and professionally have come since the show began. So 21 episodes in now, it's taken them to this point, and finally they are on a par. They respect each other so much, and obviously both of them through their interactions in the show so far they've broadened their horizons. They've opened up to new possibility, as I think Mulder has become more open-minded about viewing things through a different lens, and I think Scully the same. And the way Scully puts herself on the line for Mulder is just so beautiful, just so just so heartwarming, I think. And obviously the line about I wouldn't put myself on the line for anyone else. It sort of could be cheesy in like a weaker sort of scene, but with these two and the chemistry and the relationship that has been built up, it just comes across as so sincere and so wonderful. It's a brilliant, funny and heartwarming scene, and it builds up the characters and their relationship and bond even more. And also it builds on the wider themes of the X-Files and where the show's gonna be moving or going in the future, which another like character and his stuff does in this episode. I'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, I think because there's at the start of the episode there's a scene where Scully can't make it to court to speak on behalf of when they're trying to stop Tooms from being released. And the reason she can't do that is because she has to go in. There's like an emergency meeting with Skinner, who I'll talk about in a moment, and obviously the cigarette smoking man is also there. So Mulder actually gets a bit annoyed with her in that scene because she shows up too late to speak, and it's this sort of convenient meeting discussing like the X-Files and the future, and do that, can they justify it being sort of around, and what purpose does it really sort of serve. So I think this scene pays off what happens in that scene as well. The fact that Mulder earlier in the episode is sort of questioning Scully's, loyalty a little bit. So I think this scene almost confirms that, hey, Scully is here for the long haul. She's part of the X-Files project, no matter what. So it's a great scene. It's one of my favourite scenes of this whole season and maybe the whole show. It's classic Mulder and Scully. But I just one more thing to talk about because I mentioned him right there. Let's talk about the debut of an X-Files favourite in this episode, because this is when one Walter Skinner first appears in the show. So fan favourite Walter Skinner, aka played by Mitch Piggley, debuts here in this episode, and he's a very intriguing character from the start. He is their new sort of like boss, if you like, the new point of call. So he becomes the main like in between Mulder, Scully, and essentially the hires up. Crucially, we also see the cigarette smoking man, who is really revealed as a bit of a shady villain in this episode, but some mystery surrounding him. He's obviously going to become a massive character in the future, but crucially we have that image of him standing over Skinner in the meeting with Scully. But I think this episode, it's a strong debut for Skinner, but also what they do is they make it actually really ambiguous, like just what Skinner's motives is, if he's like in on the governmental conspiracy theory, if he just wants to shut down or frustrate the X-Files, or actually is he just an honest man trying to do his job. It's very hard to tell in this episode, but the actor is really great in this role. He feels really at home. He brings a lot of like raw emotion to it. Very, very good performance. Very interesting character in being like an in-between. And I really like this scene with him and Scully and Cigarette Smoking Man at the beginning, because it feels like very realistic, and you can see the politics at work here. But again, you may be questioning, is Skinner playing the politics up too much for his own agenda, or is he just essentially doing his job? Because he brings into question the X-Files, and I like the line actually where he says you have like, I think it's like a 73% like success rate in closing cases, and that is your one saving grace. So it's almost like he's saying, we're unsure about your methods, we're unsure about whether the X-Files is really justified in any real sense, but you keep closing these cases. You've got a good conversion rate, so this is why we're keeping you around for the time being. And he propositioned Scully by saying, in the future we would like more dialogue with you as part of almost a provision in keeping the X-Files open. And Scully actually comes back and says, to be fair, that could risk, the conversion rate, that could risk like the success rate actually going down. But I do like that felt like a very realistic exchange, and something which like a superior like Skinner might say. But there's some really good stuff with him and the cigarette smoking man actually standing over him. But yeah, overall, this episode does a good job in presenting Skinner as kind of a realistic, fair-minded boss, but also someone who may or may not have ulterior motives. Definitely, it seems like he's not one thing or the other. At times he could be one thing, at times other, but he feels like a very realistic character, and the whole question marks over the X-Files and the future of the project, it's a good seed to be planting in this episode, because it is something which is, without going into spoilers in case you've never seen the show, it is something which is going to be brought up again in the not too distant future. So I think it shows you that this episode, no matter how sloppy some of the stuff with Tooms is, it actually does plant some really good things, which is going to move the X-Files forward as a show in terms of the characters and the overall arc. So it does some really good character and world building stuff outside some of the maybe a bit more sloppy stuff with Tooms. And again, it's a good debut from Skinner. I do like then at one point he questions Mulder's his sort of motivations and him going after Tooms, and again, is it justified? So they do actually connect the Tooms stuff to the stuff with Skinner in the office is quite nicely. The crucial part of the episode is near the very end, when I think it might be the last scene, but obviously Mulder and Scully turn in their report when it comes to Tooms, and says, the cigarette smoking man is there, and Skinner says to him, "You seen this report?" And he asks cigarette smoking man, "Do you believe it?" And cigarette smoking man says, "Of course I do." But I think the question from Skinner and the response from cigarette smoking man just speaks volumes in that scene. When you have such good characters and such good development of them and of some of the world building of the show, then ultimately I think that does carry the episode a lot. The Tomb stuff sadly is hit and miss. I mean, that could have been better, but overall it's a good episode, if not maybe the knock out the park than you were hoping. It does important things moving forward. And it's a tough one to rate, but I'll give it I'd say about a 7.5 out of 10. Good stuff mostly, with a few flaws, but worth it for the Skinner stuff, his debut, cigarette smoking man, and of course that beautiful Mulder and Scully scene in the car. So that's Tooms. And support me by donating to the channel. I'll put the PayPal link in the description. Thanks for that. And I'll be back with the X-Files soon. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.